Ali's back, and so is the podcast. Welcome to the latest episode of Talking Tottenham with myself, Ryan Taylor, and Alasdair Gold. Talking Tottenham is sponsored by NordVPN and Saley. Pleased to be back, Ali.
Yeah, it took a while to get back. You know, that glorious 24-hour flight that you kind of have going back and to and from down under. But I think it's easier to kind of, the jet lag on the way back seems to be better. It was actually Zerbi that told me that, really weirdly. He said that after we'd had a chat. He was like, it's fine. It'll be okay. Going back's all right, apparently, because he'd had bad jet lag for the early days of the tour. He was getting like 3-4 hours sleep. And he was right, spot on. Hopefully he's right about a lot more things this season. Just quick apology to everyone. The plan was to do a pod while on the tour. I took the microphone and everything in order to do it, but the time difference just defeated us, really. It was 11 hours difference in New Zealand and 9 hours in Sydney, and it just wasn't going to happen. So I did loads of little videos, hopefully people saw, that went out across football.london's Facebook page and everything like that, and various social channels. So hopefully you saw that. But we're back now, and we've got a whole tour to talk about. We've got transfers to talk about. We've got loads to talk about, actually. It was a really fascinating tour, to be honest.
Definitely. I think now that the season's upon us, Ali, and we've both been around the world, I feel like the consistency will be there now with the episodes. But start from the beginning of the tour, Ali. So you headed to New Zealand. Give fans an insight into, I'm sure the majority of listeners will already know what you've been up to, but you've had some really great access and you've done some great coverage. So delve into some of the key stuff that you got stuck into.
Well, New Zealand was really wet. That is like my initial observation. It looked beautiful, but it rained for almost the entirety of the 48 hours or so that I was there. Because, that part of the tour was like a bit of a rush, because pretty much my sole engagement with Auckland was being at the stadium, because we had a press conference and open training. Actually, no, I tell a lie. The press conference, they held it in the team hotel, which wasn't too far from the stadium, but they had this traditional kind of New Zealand welcome from
Saw that.
Yeah, which was really interesting. And I don't think the players certainly involved, or some of the people involved, expected or knew that they were going to doing this thing where they put nose to nose against the people who were doing this ceremony, and you could see the look on their face like, okay, we're going to do that. So we had that. That was quite interesting to watch, and Vinay Venkatesham did a little speech as well. And then they went into this press conference in a side room in the hotel, which was Zerbi and also Andy Robertson, our first chance to talk to him, which I feel like my first question to Andy Robertson was almost a bit insulting. It was like, I didn't mean it to be. It was very much like, so, I know you have a lot of competition at Liverpool, but you've got Destiny Udogie, you've got Jed Spence at an amazing World Cup, you've got Sousa as well, the young Brazilian. How certain are you that you're going to get to play every game? And I was like, as soon as I said it, I thought, you've absolutely killed the way around the phrasing of that question. And he kind of was like, every team should have competition. I was like, yeah, all right, I get it. I'm sorry. I said it wrong. It wasn't a gentle kind of entry into the press conference that it needed. But yeah, so we had that. Then straight across to open training, and then the match the next day. So New Zealand was very much a bit of a rush. Access wasn't amazing. It was more just doing that and having, that kind of 48 hours of doing that. And actually, we got Mikey Moore in the press conference after in poor Mikey. He's such a brilliant talker for an 18-year-old, but everything was going wrong in the press conference. So the lights were on a timer, and after about 2 minutes into the press conference, all the lights went off. And then there were two doors either side of this press conference room, but they locked if you were outside. So you had people knocking on both sides to try and get in. And it's like, there's a press conference, people. So poor Mikey, he dealt with it incredibly well. And he is remarkably mature for his age. Because at that age, I was just talking rubbish. Well, I still do. And in Australia, it just kind of warmed up and got better and better and better. Quite literally, it warmed up in terms of temperature, but also the access. And we got tons of great interviews. The likes of Sandro Tonali, Mateus Fernandes. Who else did we get? Kinski, Jean-Paul Van Hecke, which is going to come out later this week. We've got an hour sit down with Roberto De Zerbi, which was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. There's more of that coming today. And obviously we had the big transfer Bomba from that as well. And there's so much, and it's all across football.london if you haven't seen it already, and there's more to come. And yeah, it was good. It was my 8th tour, which is crazy. It just shows how long I've been kind of doing this now. And this, yeah, was a very enjoyable one.
It certainly seems like you barely had much downtime, Ali. Did you get the chance to have a scout around? We actually saw a few of the Spurs players in Sydney, didn't you?
It was crazy, honestly. That's probably one of the things that marked this tour out as being a bit different. In other tours, certainly the ones in kind of Asia, like Korea and Singapore, places like that, and Hong Kong, what else we had? Tokyo in recent years. If the players were to go out, especially in their club branded stuff, they would quickly get spotted. You know, they would get very much a lot of fans coming over and things like that. In Sydney, especially, it's a city with about 5.6 million people. The main sports there are rugby league, AFL, cricket. Soccer, as they call it, is like a fraction of kind of the support there. And also, then there's a fraction of that would know what a Tottenham Hotspur player looks like and things like that.
Yeah.
It was well attended. The Spurs Chelsea game was like 80,000 people. It was incredible. Actually, I should also state in Auckland, the game against Auckland was the most watched game in terms of attendance that any men's team has had in the history of New Zealand football, which was like incredible.
Crazy.
But yeah, these players were just walking around Sydney. So, for example, I had this idea in my head that rather than in previous tours, I've sat in my hotel room and I've worked away, and you end up just like living in a box kind of thing and not enjoying the actual tour. So I decided this time I was going to just take my laptop and go to all these places and just sit there.
Yeah.
If I was sitting on a wall, sitting on a bench somewhere, or sitting in a cafe overlooking something, I was going to do that. So I deliberately went to places like Bondi Beach and sat there and worked, or Manly Beach, which is an incredible little 20-minute ferry ride away. And as I was doing that, I was spotting like Bondi Beach, and I'm looking for somewhere to have lunch in the middle, and there's Madison, Van der Ven, Van Hecker just sitting having their lunch. And they were like hi, like really confused that I was there. It was a bit like, I don't think I should probably go and have lunch there because it looks a bit stalkery. I'm going to have to go somewhere else. I was having dinner late one night after, I think it was a press conference night, and Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall walked past me, which was just really random. They both like wave and say hi. That they went off to look at the Sydney Opera House. Everyone, Kinski and Dubravka, were heading off places. They've become a bit of a kind of a bromance going on there. There was Zerbi and his coaching staff going around Sydney Botanical Gardens. It's just like really random. And I've heard various Spurs fans out there have told me it's like they were just walking down the street. And it was such a weird tour in that respect, but also a really cool one because it's great for the fans that live over there because they don't get to see them. It's like almost once in a lifetime unless they can afford to come over to the UK. So for them, it must have just been amazing to bump into these people in like real life, as it were. But yeah, it was an interesting tour from that perspective. Absolutely, just seeing them out of their natural environment, kind of in our natural environment.
I've got to say, Ali, your Tonali interview was absolutely top because some of the quotes. I mean, ultimately, what people sometimes don't realise that sometimes these kind of quotes don't come out unless certain questions are asked. But the kind of detail in terms of how far back Tottenham's interest stretches. I mean, we're not talking years, but I mean to the back end of last season. Just incredible, really, that Tonali. For those who haven't read the interview yet, I encourage you to do so. But basically, because of their Brescia connections, Zerbi kind of put the feelers out, and within a short amount of time, they were kind of actually in contact and just loosely discussing. I must say, it's not kind of anything formal. The possibility of maybe, if certain things happened, there is a chance that Zerbi would pursue the deal. And of course, how many months on, he's £100 million signing, a marquee addition, and he's set to be the heartbeat of Zerbi's team. So that was absolutely brilliant. We've got to talk about the Bomba, Ali, because it was a hot topic. When I first saw the quotes, I mean, as a journalist, sort of taking the analytical side out of it, I mean, it's gold dust, really, to have a manager, particularly an Italian one, We know the Italians love the transfer market, talking about
Yeah.
a bomber, so to speak. But it's been kind of a big story because obviously we haven't actually seen Spurs make any movement. But you were one of the few people in the room, so you had the full kind of context. Where do you kind of stand on this now? Do you still feel that something is bubbling behind the scenes? Because that's kind of how I've perceived it from the outside looking in.
Absolutely, there is something they're working on. I think. I mean, let me take you back just quickly to the start where we were waiting for De Zerbi to come in. We just had Tonali. It was all in the same room in the really cool hotel they were staying in Sydney. It's like a kind of a clash of modern and old styles. A really amazing building. And we went in and did Tonali, who, like you said, he was a great talker. Honestly, he obviously we prodded him with questions, but to be fair, he just spoke for 20 minutes at length. He was such a good talker. And we were just waiting for De Zerbi to come in, and I was going to start the interview, and one of the journalists, who I won't name, said, "What are you going to start with?" I said, "I'm just going to go straight into transfers. We've kind of warmed him up in previous press conferences. I think we can go straight into that." And they said, "No, don't do transfers. Do that maybe we'll fit that at the end or something." And I was like, "Nah, I just got a feeling he kind of wants to talk about them, so I am going to do it." It's like, watch me. And then I was so lucky; it absolutely paid off. And we know this, especially with Italian managers. I feel like Conte used to do this all the time. And Jose, obviously not Italian, but he did this. When they come in with a message they want to get out there. And that was very much like he came out, and just the way he kind of he spoke, it was just like, it's like, yeah, we're not finished yet. Yeah. And I'm trying to find the quote if I've got it here.
I love it.
Yeah.
I also love the kind of notion that I can't explain it, but the transfer market for Italians is just different. Like, Gianluca Di Marzio, and they absolutely live and breathe the mercato, so to speak. So it does feed into that.
It is. I've got the quote. It says, "The transfer market, it's not finished for sure, but we completed 60% of our project in the transfer market. Now we have another Bomba." And he looked at me. Honestly, there was like real excitement in his eyes as he said it. And I just said, like another attacker? He was like, "Yep." I said, "Is it close?" He said, "I hope, but it's not finished for sure," kind of thing. And asking around in the immediate aftermath, which was why I was able to do it or say it, I was told it's not Savinho. It's another with Savinho. They do want, and Savinho I still think will happen. But yeah, it's someone aside from Savinho, so another attacker. And he was just really excited about it, and I think him saying that also was to put a little bit of pressure on the club. We've seen so many managers do that. I think there was definitely an element of that, but also kind of speaking to people in and around the club and agents as well involved in stuff. I think that what it sounds like, it's quite a big deal they're trying to do. So one of those, it's not a fast moving thing. So him saying about a Bomba, and the Bomba is something you kind of expect to be there in 24, 48 hours. But I mean, Tonali is a great example. That took weeks to get through. So it may be that this is something that bubbles away in the background and then it happens. Or, as we know very well, sometimes things just don't end up reaching their fruition. And what I would say is, we'll know about it because De Zerbi will not be happy. And yeah, it was a brilliant sit down. There's still so much more to come from it, which is coming out later today. He was very warm, very engaging, very open. He was good fun. He spoke very openly about Tonali, as did Tonali, which surprised, I think, some people in the Newcastle media about that. Like you say, the background to it all, and there's some interesting stuff about Jean-Paul Van Hecker as well to come, which is quite funny. But then again, I think some people might suggest similar on this one. But yeah, he's brilliant, De Zerbi. He's going to be great fun across the season with press conferences, because obviously the ones towards the end of last season, they were tinged with stress and the panic about what's happening at Spurs, whereas him relaxed. And in a summer where he's had, £237 million spent on what he wants, really, he was just so laid back and just kind of reclined in his chair sometimes like leaning forward to really engage with us. Keep an eye out for what's to come. Honestly, I almost didn't chuck away any quotes from an hour worth of stuff because they were so good. There's so many angles that I could have gone in with, because if you're not aware, Ryan and I have to kind of write stuff not only for the Daily Mirror, Express, and Star, but we're also having to do kind of longer reads online as well for football.london. So we're kind of having to pick from an hour worth of stuff on Zerbi a print line, which we've got less words to work with. I don't know, 500, 600 words. It was a nightmare because he was that good. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And there's so much from it that I can't even go into yet, just in case this pod comes out before the embargo time for the second section. But just have a look at the transfer Bomba piece that I put out, which has got about Romero and Vicario as well. Them both kind of signaling their intention to leave. I had a later bit with Richarlison, which was great as well. When he, in a press conference, when he just started telling me that Richarlison some days wants to leave, some days doesn't. It's just like, what is this? It was great fun.
I'm actually smirking, Ali, because as a journalist, I know how good it is to have. Sometimes we're scratching around for kind of quotes after games, or players don't stop in the mix zone, but to have an hour with Zerbi here is so transparent and open is brilliant. Just going back to Tonali,
it's my reward. It's my reward for the Nuno Espirito Santo months. Honestly, that's what it is.
And also last season.
Last season, yes.
You went through enough last season. But just quickly going back to Tonali, I mean, the actual detail, I think that just goes to show, although as journalists, we try and get our hands on as much information as we can, there is a certain level of stuff that just happens behind the scenes that's just, certain people within the club probably don't even know about, like Tonali meeting with Zerbi. I think that would obviously... they would have tried to have kept that under wraps. But going back to the Bomba, it just makes me feel like maybe there might be stuff happening, not just at Tottenham, but at all clubs where, certain things that go on that sometimes get leaked further down the line. But certainly with that level of conviction in what he's saying, it does kind of emphasise that maybe something big is happening. I mean, Krupi was obviously... one we know was a long shot prior to his injury anyway. But to me, that shows me there is intention to go for a high profile, big attacking signing. You touched on Marmoush, Ali, which in one of your pieces, which I think is worth touching on alongside Gakpo, because Marmoush to me is a player that's almost forgotten about at City because of the level of quality. But he's a top player. I mean, he can play in so many different roles. I think he, alongside Savinho, would be an absolutely super signing for Spurs. And just touch on Gakpo as well. I mean, it feels like his situation is maybe linked to Barcola. I mean, I'm a Liverpool fan. I would be thrilled if Spurs came in for Gakpo, only because he puts good numbers on the board, but he's a little bit frustrating. So two kind of similar profiles in the sense of maybe can play from the left or as a centre forward. So these are the two of the names that are alongside Savinho up there with Spurs' shortlist, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I know that was why I kind of included it. I know that Zerbi loves Marmoush, that he's a player he really likes. And that did make me wonder whether the Bomba, was like a double signing, whether it was Savinho and Marmoush. I do feel like, because we had this real sprint in the early weeks of the transfer market where they were signing all these players. And it feels very much now we're in this bit where maybe players they want, as exactly as you say, are affected by like a domino effect and what happens with the clubs and who they can get. And I think that's very much with Savinho. It's about getting players in there at City and also, I suppose, agreeing on the right price for the player. I like Marmoush. I do. I think he would be really effective as a winger / striker to kind of fill two roles there. Gakpo, I'm similar to you. I think there's no doubting his numbers. I think he is someone that comes in and does the job. But let's say Richarlison were to go, you're looking at someone whose numbers don't really even stack up against someone like Richarlison. And then you've got to wonder, is it an upgrade? I mean, I guess it's all dependent on De Zerbi's style, I suppose. Some players fit different styles. But certainly those two, of the two, I think Marmoush would probably be the one that I'd maybe be slightly more excited about, but also at the World Cup, what he can do, Gakpo. So, it's I'm just fascinated to see who it is. Whoever it is, as I said, he had a bit of a twinkle in his eye. He was excited about that player. Krupi would have been amazing. Krupi would have been fantastic, but there was always the sense that Bournemouth were never going to let him go anyway.
No.
And then obviously the injury was out for 3 or 4 months. That's kind of put paid to that anyway. But yeah, I'm fascinated to see, and also when the Savinho deal happens, because there is a feeling in and around the tour from people in the club that it was a deal that they were going to get over the line at some point. That was the hope anyway. It's just getting to that point, I suppose, and obviously more players going out the door for Tottenham as well in the meantime.
Yeah, I think you're right on Savinho. I mean, I was quite shocked to see him start the other day for City, but then I think about it. Having lost Bernardo Silva, I mean, they probably are a little bit short. I know Bernardo mainly played in midfield, but it doesn't really make sense to offload if they've not got someone coming in, and there's no real standout candidate at the moment for a replacement. I mean, there is talk about Pedro Neto, who we'll come on to. So maybe that is one where we could see that domino, as you say. But the Savinho one, having just covered Bruno Guimaraes' impending transfer to the club from down the road, I'm a little bit exhausted of long-running sagas like Savinho, and we know the interest dates back to last summer. We're going to go into specifics now, Ali, or just after a short ad break, so to speak, for so many players, because there's loads still linked in terms of incomings and also lots of work to come on departures. So do you want to talk about the benefits of Nord, which you've just tried and tested in the Oceania, so to speak?
Absolutely. Well, people know that it's something that I always use, whether I'm on holiday, whether I'm on tours or European trips. And I did absolutely have use for it again on this tour. We had the stadiums, which were very nice, but they were in these kind of a bit like MLS stadiums in that they were behind glass to watch it from the press box. But what they also had was replay screens behind us, which was very unhelpful if you were in the first row. So what I had to do was use NordVPN to make my phone think it was back in the UK, and then I could just have Spurs play on and was able to watch the game streaming on there and use the you just watch the replays really, just in case I missed anything or hadn't seen who'd got a touch on something and things like that. So again, Nord coming up trumps for me. It is something that I've used many times in the past to, I don't know, watch my various streaming platforms to be able to watch stuff when I'm abroad, because for some unknown reason they block it as soon as you step across into a different country and some platforms, and that way I was able to watch some bits and pieces on my downtime or on some of the journeys. And it also just helps you. There's a lot of occasions, especially as a journalist, but also just in normal life, when you're using public Wi-Fi, and public Wi-Fi is a little bit iffy for people being able to get into your devices and take stuff off of them. And it's NordVPN's got its threat protection feature, which protects you from viruses and malicious malware and all that horrible stuff. And one NordVPN account can be used on up to 10 different devices, which is incredibly helpful. And if you've not heard me say it before, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world. That means there's no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. We've got a great deal on Nord, on your NordVPN plan. If you go to nordvpn.com/Talking Tottenham, our link gives you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. And there's also no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link, in case you just missed it there, is in the podcast episode description box.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ali. And we've also got a great deal for you with Saily, the international eSIM. So it's really easy to set up, and you can actually do that before you leave the country. And if you're like me and use a lot of data abroad, you'll get those texts from your mobile phone network provider saying that you've only got X amount left. And it really seems to be quite tight when you're away. It makes you realize how much you actually use your phone. But Saily is also able to protect you from dangerous websites before they load, stops the annoying ads, and it can also, like Nord, change your virtual location to allow you to access things that you might not be able to normally when you're on your normal SIM. You can also share your data across multiple devices with a hotspot. It's really easy to activate as well, and it will automatically turn on as soon as you land in your destination of choice. To download Saily, all you need to do, just go onto the App Store and use our code TalkingTottenham at checkout. You get 15% off your first purchase, and there is a link in the description below where you can activate that. Just to go back to a little bit of incomings, Ali, there was one story yesterday which kind of blew up but was short-lived because you were playing devil's advocate. But there's also Pedro Neto links again, which is interesting because we know that he was a player historically the club looked at when he was at Wolves. I remember there was a lot of kind of reports around Neto a couple of years back now. So as we mentioned, Neto is a domino, is involved in the domino because it looks like City want Neto to replace Savinho. That would allow Tottenham to sign Savinho. But I think Fabrizio Romano is reporting that Neto is maybe an option for Spurs too if they cannot land Savinho, which does make sense because he gets a lot of stick at Chelsea, but I actually really like him. I think he's a really dangerous player. He's always kind of threatening. I just don't think he quite scores enough goals. So do you want to touch on Jackson and Neto and how you kind of see it, Ali? Not that there's much to see with Jackson, so to speak.
I thought you were exclusively revealing there that Neto is a domino. That comes as a revelation.
He might be in a couple of weeks. He might be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Neto is like the Leandro Di Maio of Tottenham. He's been linked for as long as I can remember covering Spurs almost. Yeah, like you say, back to his Wolves days as well. Yeah, I think he's one that will always be in the background for Tottenham. I think Savinho is definitely the priority there. I don't think Chelsea are desperate to sell him, kind of from the noises of people that are around Chelsea. I don't think he is someone that they're actively pushing out there. And I think Man City has kind of shown an interest in him as well. Yeah, I think he's someone there that Spurs turn to if they can't get their kind of priority targets. Does also have obviously hamstring issues over the years, hasn't he? That I do feel like the whole ethos of Spurs transfer dealings, and kind of I know this from I think it's been part of Dan Lewinden's review of Tottenham, the new performance director, that there's a need now to sign players with a robustness, ones that are not going to get injured. So with Neto, with that history, I'd be very surprised if they were to end up spending big money on him unless they can guarantee that those kind of problems are behind him. That's the only thing I can see. Whereas you can see everyone they've signed thus far pretty much is someone, the people that play a lot of games. Yeah, Nicholas Jackson, that was very much like, I can't even remember where it came out from now, but it came out and then everyone went a bit mad because obviously he definitely has his merits, but he also has a million shots and will score a few of those. And yeah, it was very quickly, speaking to people in and around the club, it was very quickly ruled out that one as a player of interest. So no Nicholas Jackson. And yeah, it's a fascinating striker market really this summer. And I do wonder if that's why Spurs are mainly looking at players that could be a winger or a striker, because there's not a lot of top quality out-and-out strikers available, which is going to make the Richarlison situation really interesting.
There's one more name I'm going to throw at you, Ali, because it's been kind of speculated in
Is it going to be a top striker name?
It is a top striker. Can I also just say, I mean, this must frustrate you, but this summer especially, I've never seen so many Spurs ITK accounts. I get confused at all these. They know the ins and outs of everything. There's so many names that are thrown out there that you actually lose track of what's a complete fantasy. But Victor Osimhen, obviously a player that I think most clubs in the world would probably have a keen interest in if they needed a striker, because he has a proven track record. Slightly strange transfer to Galatasaray, in my personal opinion, without insulting the Turkish club. I found that quite a bizarre move.
I feel you have now. I feel you've deeply insulted them.
No. Huge respect to Galatasaray. But, I mean, Osimhen, I've done some digging on him in the past because he's been a player linked with, well, he nearly signed for Chelsea once upon a time on transfer deadline day. But huge contract at Galatasaray. I think we were just speaking off air. We think it's worth in the region of 250k a week plus bonuses. He's also got image rights, which are slightly more complicated, as you'll know, Ali, from the Dybala deal many years ago.
Oh, yes.
Foreign
that
players
came out on a tour. I think we were in Shanghai when that all started to come out.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more complex than just kind of a club-to-club Premier League transfer. But what can you say on Osimhen? Have you heard anything, or is this kind of a an ex-social media rumour that's just a pipe dream?
He's certainly someone I think will be offered around to a lot of clubs, is the way I'd put it. Because, like you say, he's playing in a league where he's probably getting less attention on what he does. You know, we saw him play against Spurs a couple of seasons ago in the Europa League, wasn't it? And he was
He scored, didn't he?
Yeah, it was incredible. He was so good. I think he maybe scored twice, possibly. I can't remember, but he was excellent. Yeah, I think he's someone that there'll be various clubs that will look at. It's one of those I wouldn't rule out for Spurs, but the only thing I'd heard from one person, these were not my words, but was someone who would kind of know about these things, that Spurs are putting together a very solid group of experienced Premier League proven leaders with great attitudes to kind of improve and just further bolster kind of what they've got behind the scenes. And this person said maybe Osman is maybe not of that mold. There have sometimes been some questions about his attitude, little things like that, and whether he would be someone who would come in and kind of upset the apple cart in a way. That was the only kind of tick in the negative column, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And look, that's not my opinion. I don't generally have no idea what kind of character he is. I don't know. That was just said to me by someone in football. But yeah, we'll see. He is the exception probably to the rule in that he is a top striker. Whether he fits in with what Spurs are trying to do, whether he fits in with what Zerbi wants, I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. I do feel like he is going to be someone that is going to be offered here, there, and everywhere, a bit like Lookman was last summer, right until the final knockings of the window, I think.
Ali, we're trying to get through as much as we can in this episode, but there's just so much to talk about. We could be here for a couple of hours, but let's shift slightly to outgoings. And we know there will be plenty before the deadline because the squad's quite bloated. And I have to say, looking at Spurs' squad on paper, I've sometimes stumbled across them graphics where you've got like the depth. So you've got the best starting 11, then you've got the names below. And literally, you know, from back to front, other than maybe left wing and striker, I mean, even striking options aren't terrible, but the squad is looking really sort of beefy and strong now. So that does point towards the fact that maybe we need to trim it down. I don't know why I'm saying we as if I'm part of the recruitment staff. But
there's another big reveal.
Yes. Lucas Bergvall, bit of a strange tour in the sense that De Zerbi kind of come out and also said about Jed Spence as well that he won't actively go out of his way to convince these players to stay. If they want to be here, he'll be very happy to have them. But we know that Forest and Newcastle made bids. I mean, I'm just looking at the way De Zerbi wants to play, and you've got Fernandes, you've got Tonali, you've got Maddison, you've got Conor Gallagher, Bentancur. I mean,
Archie
Gray, who's
captain the side on all 3 games on the tour.
Exactly, which indicates he is 100% valued by De Zerbi. I mean, I still look at Bergvall and feel Bruno Guimaraes at Newcastle are going to have a bit of cash to spend in midfield. Are they going to return to the table? What's your kind of sense, Ali? Do you still feel it's 50-50 whether Lucas could stay or slightly maybe more leaning towards an exit?
One thing I would say, De Zerbi doesn't really want to lose him. I think he really likes him. And he deliberately, I think, gave him quite a few minutes on the tour. He probably was one of the World Cup stars that played the most minutes. And when I asked about Romero and Vicario, like you say, he went straight to talking as well about Bergvall and Spence, as if to say, look, I really want both of them to stay. They're really both important players. But ultimately also, Tottenham is a big club. It should not have to have anyone there that doesn't want to be there. And he is right. Absolutely spot on. And like you say, the midfield depth, I would say the attacking depth is still a bit light in terms of some of that attacking depth comes from players that have been injured or have been out for a long time, like Kulusevski, Xavi, Odebear. You know, we're not going to even see some of these players for a while, are we? Kudus hopefully should be back in training this week. Kulusevski, I think they were going to give him a couple of weeks and just assess where he's at, but there was he kind of I can't say. I just realised it's in the embargo section, so I can't say what he said about Kulusevski. But look on football.london, he does give a little update on him.
Good plug.
I know I was very close there to saying what he said. Yeah, and with the midfield, I think that's the one area that it is genuinely rammed with options. And I think I just fear, because I really like Lucas, and I think just we're going to get to a point where Spurs want to continue spending. They want to continue bringing in attacking players. And there's going to be someone in this midfield, huge army, legion of midfielders, where they're like, well, he wants to go. If Newcastle offers, I don't know, let's say 60 million, does it just get to a point where you're like, well, a bit like Vuskovic, you just kind of got to let them go, and you put in some things for the future, like sell-ons and matching rights, things like that. And you just kind of end up having to wish them all the best and let them go. And that's my fear with Bergvall, that's going to happen. I thought last year, I thought Sarr would probably be one that goes, but as
Yeah,
of
Sarr. Forget about Sarr.
yeah, we haven't really seen any movement on that yet. I know there's interest. I think Villa maybe have been kind of touted as having interest in him, but yeah, we haven't really seen anything with him. Although Zerbi called him and Bentancur crucial players to him. Although I feel like he's called everyone a crucial player to him this summer. So yeah, it could just be a case of don't lowball us with an offer, but. Yeah, it'd be a massive shame if Lucas goes, because he's got brilliant talent. Bit like Archie Gray, I think the ceiling for both of them is absolutely huge. They've played I think Lucas has played 78 games, competitive games for Spurs already. Archie's played something like 82, 83 games. They've had so much exposure to first team football. You kind of always want to scream to Lucas, like, just patience, just show some patience. This is Spurs. There will be injuries, but you also know he wants to go and play. I think Forest was always kind of deemed as his preferred move, but I'm a bit like you. I think the Newcastle one would probably give him more exposure as well. But what do I know? It's kind of up to the club and him to decide, really.
I feel like just from the outside, as someone with no kind of interest in terms of just from the outside, sorry, without waffling, Lucas Bergvall, I think 60 million. Given the fee they signed him from, they plucked him out of the Swedish league. They've developed him. Yes, he's won Player of the Year awards, but I can't really see him being worth much more than that. And if he's not going to play, I think in terms of, I know it's not a business, Spurs, but book value, that must be great on the financial fair play deal sheets. And it's not about being economically stable, but I can't really see Spurs getting much more than that. So I think it would still be a good deal, as much as I know Spurs fans would be disappointed to lose him. It looks like a lot of
hat on. Just very quick with my nerdy hat on. He is another player that would end up being club trained and homegrown. So
that's
one
true.
of those that they're letting out the door too.
Yeah, no, that is important nowadays, particularly over the past few years. There's needed to be a lot of wiggle room in certain areas. Let's move on to some of the other departures. So Manuel Solomon, we know his representative has come out and said we want to leave Spurs. I know West Ham are interested. There's been links with Hull. It's a bit strange, Ali, that he started so many games in pre-season. Do you have any context as to why? I imagine probably because there's a lack of right-wing options at the moment and they need to rest as well.
That's it. I mean, I wrote a piece way before the tour. I think actually maybe even before pre-season started, just saying that Zerbi had already told him he could look for a new club this summer. He wasn't going to be part of his plans. But then as it got closer to the tour, I think they, and obviously we in our reporting, realised like there isn't a lot of wingers at the moment that he could take on the tour. So he needed kind of this experienced head, I think, just to... I say experienced head in terms of he's been at so many different clubs when you look at his career now, so many different countries he's played in, and he was all right. He was bright. He's the kind of winger who does nothing for about 80, 85 minutes. You don't really see much of him. And then he'll pop up in really important little moments and he'll contribute.
Back post.
Yeah, exactly. And he'll do like little things. And I thought he, did his cause no harm at all in terms of finding a new club. And that's probably what's kind of alerted West Ham again to his availability. And I kind of feel he's that kind of yo-yo kind of player in that he's decent enough for the Premier League, but will absolutely thrive in the Championship. We saw it with Leeds. He was incredible for Leeds. And I think with West Ham, he would have the opportunity to kind of absolutely smash it there and then stay with them if they got promoted and then try and rebuild his Premier League reputation again. But yeah, actually really interesting because they could get him and there's talk that they could get Troy Parrott as well. So there could be another Spurs connection in there too. and of which
And the
Spurs,
sell-on clause.
yeah, 20%, I think it was, of profit. So bearing in mind Spurs didn't let him go for too much in the first place, that could actually be quite decent for Spurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Solomon's going to be a departure. I mean, we haven't even really talked about Romero and Vicario. Like
No,
Romero,
yeah.
the fee for Romero, I think, is going to end up being ridiculously low, just because they just know he wants to. I think we've said this before. I am surprised, at the moment it's looking like Inter Milan. It just feels
Yeah.
like, again, with no disrespect to another club, it just feels like a bit of a sideways move for him. Whereas I kind of got the Atletico Madrid one, and it may be that they still come in. There's talk that they might,
Yeah.
but his kind of passion to play in the Liga. Simeone, of course, is like a big kind of inspiration, compatriot to him. And I just kind of felt that when I got. Whereas Inter Milan, it's a bit like, well, you're just kind of going back to Serie A. It was not like a big, glorious move that I kind of expected him to do. But yeah, I just think the fee for that is going to end up being ludicrous, really, in terms of comparison to like Vuskovic and Van Hecke. And also, is it a little bit damning of Romero as well? And again, I feel like I'm really slating Inter Milan. I'm not. They're a terrific club. Obviously, have won the Serie A title in not too in recent years as well. But I just kind of feel like, is there a sense that maybe he is a bit of a in terms of availability, he's injured too much, he gets suspended too much. Has that affected the market for him and interest in him? I don't know. But then you see him at the World Cup, he's just brilliant. And Vicario, it just seems like a bit of a shootout, doesn't it, to which Italian club gets him at the end of the day. They all seem to be waiting for that price to come down. I think Spurs, what, they sign him for about 17 million, something like that. I can't see that they're going to look for much less than that. But yeah, there's going to be some big departures this summer, but it all kind of sets up what's to come in as well, really.
100%. Ali, just a quick double update. What's your latest understanding of? There's quite strong rumours that Ashley Phillips and Mason Melia will be heading to the Championship on loan.
Yes.
Well, in one case, on loan.
Yes, Phillips, I'd imagine, will probably be a permanent deal. We're waiting to see whether that's absolutely confirmed or not, but he's just never going to play for Spurs. It's just not happening for him. Actually, he was one.
I should add.
Yeah, it is Middlesbrough, but he was never. I was trying to think. Was it even mentioned in the tour update when they did the squad?
No, I don't think and he was in the Championship Player of the Season, Team of the Season last year. So
yeah, I mean, he is technically a senior player that's come back, even though he's never played a competitive game. I just realised normally they'll say, like, this player's been left behind to seek transfer options, blah blah blah. And yeah, he wasn't. And he's going to be a really good player. I think he'll be a Premier League player. I absolutely do think he will be. But it just never has worked for him at Spurs. I don't know whether it's a technique thing or what it is, but no manager has really looked at him and thought, yeah, I'll give him a chance, which is a massive shame. Mason Melia looks like Lincoln City is going to be the destination. He had a remarkable more than 30 clubs were registered in him, which is mad, from all across Europe and England as well. And I think Lincoln have got a bit of a history with young players and young Irish players, haven't they? So I think that's going to be a good kind of place for
Morgan Rogers and Brennan Johnson both developed there, so that might be a good landing spot for him.
Famous Irish players, yes.
I know.
I know what you mean.
They're not Irish, but yeah.
I know. It was only because I set that up, and then you picked probably the two most non-Irish players. Yes, absolutely. I think that'd be a great move for him. But it's a good test, really, to see, because Spurs have had a lot of strikers in the past. We spoke about Troy Parrott, Dane Scarlett's another, that have gone to the Championship and kind of haven't quite fired as much as they can. Troy obviously had to go to the Netherlands to really hit his mark, and Dane hasn't yet. And I think it's a good one for Mason. We'll see how he gets on. And then there's Mikey Moore as well. Mikey Moore's has had so much interest in him. Both Mason Melia and Mikey Moore, I should stress, will be loans without any option to buy. That's the vibe coming out of the club, which is quite right and the way it should be. And yeah, with Mikey Moore, it's a case of kind of waiting to see maybe the level of English clubs that come in. Because you don't want to send him to, let's say, a promoted Premier League club and he doesn't really play much. And Championship could be. I think there was some interest from Middlesbrough, wasn't there, in him as well?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a double deal with Spurs with Phillips. But certainly Cologne is the one, FC Cologne is the one abroad that would be his preferred option if he is to move abroad. And we'll see what kind of happens there. I think that would be a terrific move. I do. I'm all for young English players getting abroad to, like, especially the Bundesliga. It's the closest you're going to get to the English game. I think that could be a terrific move for Mikey. Obviously had a brilliant year at Rangers as well. So we shall see. Probably, I think a lot of those moves that we just spoken about will be tied up by, I don't know, the next 48 hours or so, you'd think.
Brilliant, Ali. And just lastly, I wanted to just get a little line or two off you about 3 youngsters that impressed on the tour. Young Rio, that incredible run and strike. Luca Williams-Barnett obviously making a big impact. It looks like this could be a big season for him. And also young Ty Hall as well, who caught the eye.
Yeah, I mean, Zerbi had picked this huge squad, 35-man squad. He knew that he didn't want to put any of the World Cup stars straight into it. He didn't want to use players that had serious injuries last season and throw them straight into matches this preseason. He really wanted to build them up slowly. And then he had some players like Maddison and Doggy who just had little issues. And it was, yeah, Doggy does worry me slightly in terms of
Same here.
it just feels like, getting back-to-back games is not really happening for him. But yeah, so what it meant was Rio Karamartin and Ty Hall as midfielders got to play pretty much most of a lot of the minutes across the tour as fullbacks, because the fullbacks in the Zerbi team, a little bit like Postecoglou's, they invert, so it lends itself to a midfielder being able to play there if they can also tackle. And they both did brilliantly. I thought Ty Hall was so versatile, played across various positions. Son of Fitzhall, by the way, if people don't know.
Yeah.
And
he's involved in agency as well, isn't he?
He is, yeah. And Rio just did so well. I felt like the first game against Auckland, it took him a little while. He had to get used to they had quite a tricky winger. But as the tour went on, he got better and better. And like you say, had that moment where he kind of span onto an Archie Gray pass on the halfway line, sprinted up the pitch and hit this dipping effort to hit the crossbar. He actually went off with an injury not too long after that. And that Tyler, I don't know if you pronounce it Tingy or Tingy, he got to come on. He looks about 12 years old, but he's a good young centre-back, and he's like massive Spurs family as well. So what a moment for him. They were brilliant. And then you had Luca Williams-Barnett, who has got more confidence than any human being I think I have ever come across. He is so confident in himself and his ability, and we saw him do that Panenka penalty as well in the shootout against Sydney FC. And he just really impressed. He took every year there's someone on a tour that screams to the manager, give me a chance. And it was Luca. He's 17. And the key for him now is just to keep his feet on the ground, keep working, and not kind of get carried away with himself, which must be so difficult when you're that age and you're, doing what you're doing, and everyone's raving about you on social media as well, and journalists like us are kind of bigging him up too. It must be so difficult but then you've got to remember he's a kid. Like, I was interviewing Mateus Fernandes in this Spurs house, this really cool space that they'd opened up in Sydney for the fans to come into. And as he's doing that, in the background, to the press officer, Luca Williams-Barnett walked up and he's like, can I do this? Because they had these computer game things where you could like pretend you were driving a race car. And he's like, can I play the computer game? And it's like, you can see the press officer like, I'm not your dad. Kind of thing. But then it's the moments like that, you remember he's just 17 years old. And he wanted to play computer games. And Lucas Bergvall came over and played alongside him. And he had Jan Min-hyuk watching him. And Richarlison kind of watching him, but he was getting various Spurs fans wanting him to sign stuff for him. But yeah, you just remember in those little moments that he's still a kid. He's not even an adult yet. And he can't go on loan really until January at the earliest because he isn't 18 yet. So I think we speak about this exodus of young players. Players like Luca will benefit. And also Janai Byfield when he's back. Malachi Hardy, by the way, stepped in with Janai Byfield being out injured. Malachi was terrific. He's only 18 years centre-back, and he was so good. So yeah, they absolutely did themselves all proud. And well, I think we'll see a load of loan offers come in for a lot of these players, and hopefully some of them actually play for Tottenham Hotspur at some point. That would be great.
I think a lot of the Mali, in terms of you looking at the landscape, I know Manchester City have such a great academy, but since I've been covering Tottenham more frequently, you realise the amount of talent at the club, and it doesn't feel like they get enough opportunities, really. So I'm hoping that just the fact that Spurs have spent big this summer doesn't prevent opportunities for some of them. I mean, Luca Williams-Barnett, he's the type of player, it might seem crazy, but I could imagine him playing for like PSG or something, because he's just got that kind of maverick sort of unbelievable confidence and ability. And
You know who he reminds me of? And I know this is such a lofty comparison, and this is really, really early days. I'm not saying like for like in any way, but he reminds me a bit of Gaza in that he's just got this natural ability on the ball to do whatever he wants with it.
Yeah.
And then essentially it's like everyone on the pitch is just playing in Luca Williams-Barnett's world. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever if he wants to do something, he will do it. He will motor pass someone. He will play a clever through ball. I mean, some of the passes he was doing as well were fantastic. But also he's got that impish side, a bit like Gaza had. Obviously, Gaza, we know about lots of other stuff and issues since and things like that. But he definitely has that kind of rascalish side, or that element to him. I think the key for him is going to be looking at players like Harry Kane and how he is the perfect archetype of how to be and to work incredibly hard and reach kind of the pinnacle, because he's got everything about his game already that can do so much damage. And I think it was it Ben Davies said? It might have been, but it was someone I asked after one of the games, and I think it was Ben Davies said, it's just now, actually it might have even been Zerbi, he said, it's just now about learning the structure of football and what you're meant to do and what you're meant to do as a player within an 11. Because as a maverick, as an individual, he's just incredible. But he's got to learn, how you go about things during a game of football, and when you're meant to cover, when you're meant to tackle, when you're meant to press, things like that. And once he starts to do that and keeps his head down, works hard, my goodness, he could be the big hope coming through Tottenham's academy.
Totally agree. I think, Ali, that this has been one of my favourite episodes yet. We've covered so much.
We have covered
obviously your Jan Paul van Hecker interview and your second part of your Zerbi sit down will go on the football.london website. So Spurs are playing Getafe this weekend.
Yes.
Isn't it at the training ground? And will you be there, or is it behind closed doors?
It is behind closed doors. I'm actually off this week, which normally excites people because it means something will happen at Tottenham, because they like to do that, and hopefully it does. So I'm not going to be reporting on the game this week. I will be back next week for the Hoffenheim game at the stadium. I don't know if we're allowed to watch the second one, the second 11, but obviously both games will. I think Spurs are streaming them, so I'll be able to, and I'm sure I'll be keeping an eye on Saturday's game from wherever I will be. But it would be interesting to see now how he steps up the minutes of various players and how much closer they get to actually being. Like players like Kudus, do we see him get some minutes and things like that? And and also who comes through the door.
Looking forward to it, Ali. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, please go to nordvpn.com/talkingtottenham. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan, and there is no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box below.